Federal Executive Council approves a 49 billion naira revised sum for Enugu-Anambra Road. Bank of Canada keeps rates on hold as sees stronger 2023 growth. Plus, oil falls as investors worry over recession fears. This is Business Express on the network service of the NTA, and we are reaching you from Abuja, the nation's capital. I am Benny Adams, your guide. Good to have you join us. It's time to talk business. And the federal government is to spend more than 6 billion naira for the pavement of the third mainland bridge, Lagos. This is in consonance with Executive Order 11, signed by the President for the continued maintenance of public infrastructure. Minister of Works and Housing, Babatunde Fashola, made this known while briefing newsmen on some of the approvals given by the Federal Executive Council at its meeting on Wednesday. State House correspondent Jide Onifade reports on this and other deliberations at the Council's meeting.
And the work that we did concentrated largely on the substructure of the bridge. These are maintenance works that are critical to the structural integrity of the bridge. What we're dealing with now is different, is the driving surface and also the aesthetics.
Two memos were presented by Minister of Works and Housing, Babatunde Fashola, and approved by the Federal Executive Council. The first is the contract cost revision of the old Enugu-Onitsha road from OP Junction to Anambra border in Enugu State.
The augmentation was in the sum of 17 billion and 50 million, which revised the contract sum to 48 billion 996 million 488,925 naira.
The second approval is a new contract which is for the maintenance of the pavement of the third mainland bridge.
And the State House, Jide Onifade.
The federal government has so far disbursed 50 billion naira on poverty reduction in the country from the 400 billion naira approved for the execution of the program. This was made known after a meeting of the Steering Committee of the National Poverty Reduction held at the Presidential Villa and chaired by Vice President Yemi Osinbajo. Explaining the position of the committee after the meeting, Governor Abdullahi Sule, who is the co-chair of the steering committee, says more still needs to be done in achieving the 100 million goal mark of the administration.
And from what we receive from the chairman of the technical working group, over 50 billion has been spent so far. So the performance so far is low, is not yet where we expect to go, but nearly every aspect of the 15 areas where the spending will be carried out, Ministry of Social Development, Ministry of Agric, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Water Resources, and the Ministry of Finance and National Planning as well, so every one of them has some kind of implementation one after another.
It would be recalled that the National Steering Committee on National Poverty Reduction with Goal Strategy was inaugurated by President Muhammadu Buhari in June 2021 to focus on 15 key areas germane to poverty reduction in the country, based on recommendations by the Presidential Economic Advisory Committee and the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. As Nigeria and other emerging economies struggle with high debts as well as high interest rates, the International Monetary Fund anticipates that global fiscal levels will start going back up with expected financial stability and reduce debt vulnerabilities for many countries. Moplang Dakok in Washington, D.C. reports on the Fiscal Monitor Report of the IMF and the place of Nigeria.
It is a trying time for most emerging economies caused by slow growth, debt concerns, and geopolitical tensions. The IMF predicts that going by present realities, global debt to GDP ratio could rise to 100% by 2028, and developing economies like Nigeria and Ghana are expected to suffer the most because of lack of buffers. It is time policymakers reflect on how to improve rule-based fiscal frameworks, which should be designed with the right balance between having enough flexibility to adjust to shocks and being credible.
Is fully reasonable as a way to managing public finance risks from a medium-term perspective.
The fund also recommends that low-income countries increase revenue in order to restore fiscal sustainability and help achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. From Washington, D.C., Moplang Dakok.
It has been said that fintech, which leverages digital technology, is the future of finance globally. And as a financial sector of many economies currently face challenges, the IMF recommends that central banks should formulate policies to guide the usage of fintech in order to maximize the benefits. Tommaso Mancini, division chief of the IMF, spoke to Moplang Dakok for Business Express in Washington District of Columbia. Let's now join her for that conversation.
Thank you so much for joining us on Business Express on the Nigerian Television Authority from Washington, D.C. I will be talking about fintech, and I'll start by asking you why the IMF is interested in fintech, and then you can tell us the role of the IMF in fintech.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here. So the IMF has a mandate to focus on macro-financial stability. And we believe that the developments in fintech have implications for macro-financial stability. The implications are both positive, so there can be large gains in growth, in financial inclusion, in market integration, in cross-border payments, which decreases the costs of doing business. Those are some of the opportunities that lie and that would strengthen the stability of macroeconomics. On the other hand, there are risks to macrofinancial stability. There are risks to financial stability. There are risks to the functioning of banks. There are risks to capital flows and capital flow volatility. All sorts of risks that need to be managed, that need to be understood by country authorities. And we are here to help. And we are here to help in our three traditional ways. On the one hand, we do analytical work to try to push the boundaries of our understanding and to help countries come to grips with these new developments. On the other hand, we do surveillance, so we engage directly with country authorities and we discuss policy issues with them in this space. And thirdly, we do a capacity development. So we work with countries to bring our expertise and the expertise of others around the world to help country authorities build capacity, to be in a position to be able to leverage the opportunities and contain the risks of these new developments. We have to establish what success means and what are the criteria with which the central bank and the country has decided to measure the development of the e-Naira. There are multiple reasons why countries engage in central bank digital currencies, CBDC. E-Naira is an example of that. One reason may be to have a greater resilience in the payment system. So if most of your payments are being intermediated by a private company, perhaps a foreign company, the country is susceptible to that company going bankrupt, deciding to leave the country, running into cybersecurity problems. And having a state-backed means of payment increases the resilience of the system. It adds a backup. Another related reason why countries might engage in CBDC is to discipline the market, to discipline the private sector providers of payments. If there is a public option that is functioning well, that is cheap, the private sector will not be able to charge very high rates and will have to offer good services, even if the public solution is not highly adopted. There are many other reasons. Countries are interested in increasing financial inclusion with CBDC. Countries are interested in encouraging innovation because there can be innovation on top of CBDC. Suppose that your CBDC can be easily incorporated into a digital wallet, into a social messaging app. And through that app, users can have access to other financial services. That would increase innovation. And of course, countries are also interested in leveraging CBDC to facilitate cross-border payments. So Nigeria needs to be very clear as to what its objectives are with the e-Naira, and then success will be measured against those objectives. I have to say that the e-Naira started out with a relatively lukewarm adoption, but adoption has increased tremendously this year alone. And as I understand, usage has increased by about 60% this year alone, and there are about 13 million wallets right now in Nigeria, which is a substantial increase over last year. And surely this will continue increasing as the central bank does more communication, more outreach. And it's important for central banks in general to understand that if they get into this space, which is a new space, it's a space that involves dealing directly with customers. The central bank will have to be more forthright, more outgoing in reaching out to customers and ensuring that everybody understands what this new solution is about.
Okay.
And there are two things that the public authorities need to get right. The first thing is a very clear and robust regulatory framework. So it's important to be clear about what the rules of the game are for the new private sector innovators in this space, whether they're a mobile money provider, a stablecoin provider, a payment or wallet provider. There has to be clear regulation. And that is no small feat. The second thing that is very important in this space is that the public sector continue to play a role in the settlement of transactions. Currently, many of our transactions are no longer in cash, they're in commercial bank money. So you will bank with a specific bank and you will hold deposits in that bank and you will shift those deposits around when you make payments. What is going on under the surface is that there is a public infrastructure to make those payments, and there are central bank reserves that are being moved between commercial banks. And the existence of that infrastructure and the existence of central bank money underpins the entire system and is very important for trust. It brings security to the whole payment space. And it's important that that continue to be so in the world of tomorrow, in the digital world. Central bank digital currency can actually serve that role. Central bank digital currency can be the new settlement asset and the new infrastructure in the digital world of payments of tomorrow. And I would just clarify that digital currency is a relatively large bucket. It would be useful to separate it. And to separate it, we've spoken a lot about central bank digital currency until now. That is the public sector version. And then there are private sector versions of digital money, often referred to as crypto assets. Crypto assets can be backed with assets held in a commercial bank or a custodian. Those are typically called stable coins. And crypto assets can be unbacked, like Bitcoin. So we have very clear policies on both of these areas, whether it's the public sector or the private sector. We've spoken a lot about the public sector, so let me focus on crypto assets and say that the IMF has put out in the end of February a paper that is called the Elements for Effective Policies Regarding Crypto Assets. And what we've tried to do is highlight all the policy objectives that countries should strive to achieve in regulating crypto assets. We believe, first of all, that it's important for countries to retain monetary policy independence. And to do so, it's important that countries not make crypto assets legal tender.
All right, thank you very much once again. Well, that will be all from Washington, D.C., and it's back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Moplang Dakorgan Tomasa Mancini, for that insight on Nigerian fintechs. Well, moving on, like an unhealing sore, fuel subsidy in Nigeria has evaded several attempts at its removal. Not anymore, or so it appears, as the federal government takes a definitive stand to cut ties with subsidy, considered a conduit for draining the nation's commonwealth. Over now to Onengie Fineface with the second report in our series on the fuel subsidy narrative in Nigeria.
Fuel subsidy in Nigeria dates back to the 1970s, following the oil shock of 1973, which spiked the price of oil in the international market. In 2011, Nigeria spent more than 2 trillion naira on fuel subsidy. The figure almost doubled to 4.39 trillion naira in 2022. Despite the huge sums paid as subsidy, fuel prices remain unstable. Nigerians continue to lament the enrichment of a few individuals, the cabal, if you may. The popular demand remains: remove fuel subsidy.
So by the time it liberalizes, where every dealer have the right and the potential to import the product and equally sell at its own capacity. Purchasers too, at the end angle, can even decide to buy whatever angle they want to buy at any price.
Successive administrations have attempted to stop the subsidy payment. They failed. June 2023 is pegged to say good riddance to fuel subsidy in Nigeria.
This is a commitment in the petroleum industry bill. There's a provision that says that 18 months after the effectiveness of the PIA, that all petroleum products must be deregulated. That 18 months takes us to June 2023.
To cushion the likely initial effect, a World Bank loan of $800 million is secured. It will provide palliatives to 50 million Nigerians in 10 million households.
Because if people are given a little money, okay, this is the immediate direct, fine. That will be in order. But the important thing that needs to happen is that that subsidy must go. And it's for us to have the holistic perspective. It's impacting negatively on manufacturing because it's competing for the same funds.
Expenses of a worker relates to his salary. I think something should be done about it. Something should be done about their augmenting their salaries.
Experts in the energy sector and even those not so lettered are for once unanimous and hopeful. Will the switch to subsidizing the rich to the not so well off achieve its goal? Time. Only time will tell. Onengie Fineface.
Thank you, Nenge. And still talking energy, oil prices retreated on Thursday after rising for 2 sessions, with investors still showing lingering concern over a possible U.S. recession and weaker oil demand. Brent crude fell 20 cents to $87.13 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate slid 15 cents to $83.11. Both benchmarks rose 2% on Wednesday to their highest in more than a month, as cooling U.S. inflation data spur hopes the Federal Reserve is likely to stop hiking interest rates. And now let's take a look at prices of other commodities in the global market. Well, before we get to know how the equities will do today, let's take a look at what happened at the close of midweek session, which was negative, as the all-share index declined to 51,953.41 basis points, as equities capitalization fell to 28.3 trillion naira. A total of 255 million securities valued at 1.7 billion naira were traded in 3,890 deals. Transcorp Nigeria, Fidelity Bank, and United Bank for Africa were the most traded stocks in terms of volume at the end of the session. Well, next is global market update.
Investors will be analyzing minutes from the March Federal Open Market Committee meeting, which showed that Fed officials anticipate the U.S. economy will enter a recession in the aftermath of the recent banking turmoil. European stock market opened mixed Thursday as investors digest key inflation data out of the U.S. released Wednesday. Asia markets were mostly lower on Thursday after minutes from the March Federal Open Market Committee meeting showed that Fed officials see the U.S. economy entering a recession in the wake of the banking crisis. Stocks on Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index fell 0.53%. In mainland China, the Shanghai Composite dropped 0.28%, while Nikkei rose 0.26%. In U.S., futures tied to the Dow Jones Industrial Average were little changed early Thursday morning as investors weighed recession risk following the latest meeting minutes from the Federal Reserve. Dow Jones were 6 points lower, or 0.02%, while futures linked to the S&P 500 ticked higher by 0.06%. Nasdaq 100 futures also inched up 0.11%. No figures yet from Africa markets as at the time of this report. Bosede Able, Business Express.
Thank you, Bosede. That wraps Business Express for now. Remember to send in your comments, observations, and suggestions. Also be informed that all previous episodes are available on YouTube on NTA's channel. Business Express returns Friday at 3 p.m. Keep a date with us then.